Today I'm going to be talking about this movie I seen a couple of weeks ago called There Will Be Blood. I heard about this movie back when I was around 14, back in freshman year, when I was thinking about becoming a director. I got into like the movie side of YouTube, and this movie is one that I heard stuff about. I heard it was a good movie, and I heard it was kind of in the red pill movie genre ish, like Fight Club, American Psycho, Taxi Driver, that whole like lane, the Joker, that whole lane. And when I was watching it, I see kind of why. I don't think it's in that lane. It's kind of like maybe it is in that lane. It's like a rise and fall story. It's like Citizen Kane. That's the closest movie I can compare it to, because that's the movie that I'm reminded of the most when I think about this movie. But yeah, that's what it's like. It's like Citizen Kane, but different in a lot of ways, but it has a lot of similarities. The plot or the story of the movie is about this guy named Daniel, who starts off as just a normal person who's trying to become an oil man, to inevitably him becoming the man that he always wanted to be. But he doesn't necessarily lose anything in the process, like Kane, where Kane becomes the man, but he loses pretty much everything. He loses, his integrity, his family, his money, his power. He loses pretty much everything by the end of the movie, where he has nothing. This movie, it's different. I can't go, I guess, through specifically each plot point. So the movie starts off with Daniel, the main character, in a oil hole. I don't know what it's called. I'm not old. A oil hole thing, and he falls and he breaks his leg, and he pulls himself back up and goes into town, showing his will and dedication, or just belief in himself, I guess, and his ability not to let the circumstances that he exists around dictate how he's going to operate in the world in which he exists in. He manages to get back to town. We fast forward a bit in time. Now he has more people working with him on the well. We fast forward a bit in time, and he is in this city where he meets with this kid named Paul Sunday, who tells him about oil that he has under his house. Paul Sunday meets with Daniel to tell him, Daniel Plainview, about oil that he has under his house. Then Daniel Plainview goes there, buys up a whole bunch of land, starts drilling the oil. Comes across this guy named Eli Sunday, who's Paul Sunday's brother, but who's played by the same actor, so they're supposed to be identical twins. Eli Sunday is like a Christian. Daniel spends the next portion of this movie being semi the boss of this little place where Paul and Eli are from, this little town or whatever, because he bought up so much land and is working on getting the oil from within. Everyone kind of is centered around him. He's like the boss of this little place that he's in right now, as he looks for his oil. When he finds the oil, and his son ended up going deaf in the process because of an explosion. But he gets the oil, though. He becomes rich, but he needs to expand. Once he gets the oil, he needs to expand. He needs to sell the oil. But he wants to sell it he doesn't want to sell the oil to these group of men, because then he'll have no work to do.
Is this about buying up my tracks here?
Yes.
The cable was about my Coyote Hills lease.
We'd like that too.
What's your offer on Coyote Hills?
We'll offer $150,000 for full title.
That's a deal. What's next?
You have 11,000 acres in Little Boston. You have one proven well that was
That's
damaged.
3 wells proven. You haven't been paying attention. That's 3 proven wells.
We'll make you a millionaire while you're sitting here from one minute to the next.
What else would I do with myself?
Are you asking me?
What else would I do with myself?
Take care of your son. I don't know what you would do.
If you were me and stand it off to buy what you had for $1 million, why? So why?
You know what?
Instead, he wants to give the oil specifically to another group of people. But in order for him to do this, he needs a pipeline.
Where are you going to put it all? Where? Build a pipeline, make a deal with Union Oil, be my guest. But if you can't pull it off, you've got an ocean of oil under your feet with nowhere to go. Why not turn it over to us? We'll make you rich. You spend time with your boy. It's a great discovery. Now let us help you.
You just tell me how to run my family.
There's an old man who controls this, who has this piece of land that's the only land that Daniel hasn't bought up. And this piece of land the pipeline needs to go through this piece of land. in order for Daniel to get the oil to the people who want to buy it. The new group of people, not the two group of people who just want to buy everything, who don't want a pipeline, who just want to buy it. So Daniel doesn't want to go through them because he doesn't want to sell out. He wants to make his own pipeline and sell to a different group of people. I don't know that much of specifics. I've only seen it one time, but he manages to get the pipeline through this specific piece of property to sell the oil to the other group of people, because the person who owns the land in which Daniel needs to get the pipeline through is a Christian, and he tells Daniel he must convert to Christianity. And there's this thing that happens with Daniel and his brother, but that's I guess that's not necessary to that's necessary to Daniel as a person, which I'll get to later, I guess. And he becomes a Christian, and once he becomes a Christian, Eli Sunday is kind of chastising him or belittling him or just making him, when he's becoming a Christian, he's like, admit that you abandoned your son, or admit that you did this.
You have abandoned your child.
I've abandoned my child.
I will never backslide.
I will never backslide.
I was lost, but now I am
I
found.
was lost, but now I'm found.
I have abandoned my child. Say it. Say it.
I've abandoned my child.
Say it louder. Say it louder.
I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my boy!
Beg for the blood.
And that's a big moment for Daniel, because he has to sacrifice his ego, in order to get the property. But we'll talk about that later. I'm not really talking about Daniel. I'm just going through like the big plot points, so I can get into like the smaller details later. But Daniel does it, and he gets the pipeline. And there's this little scene that happens where Daniel's drinking alcohol in this restaurant when he gets his son back, and meets with the original two people who wanted to buy out all the oil from Daniel. And Daniel talks about them. He basically tells them how he's rich now, and that he didn't do the oil thing. He went his own way, and he's very drunk, and he gets all up in his face, and he says, you look like a fool right now, don't you? It kind of reminds me of that scene from Scar. Let me just get back to the pot. And then fast forward, we're 10 years ahead of that time, I think, and Daniel is extremely rich in this big house like Citizen Kane. He's all alone. Everything's all dark. He has all the money. He has random people next to him. And Daniel has a falling out with his son because his son wants to become an oil man himself. Daniel falls out with his son and tells his son that he's not actually his son, but just a face that he used to try to get people to feel pity for him. Which is sad, but I believe it's true. It's true that that Daniel's son is not his real son, but I don't believe that Daniel actually didn't care about his son. I think he was just saying that to spite him. Eli comes to meet with Daniel and asks Daniel about the oil from the property that Daniel wanted to buy to get the oil from. The property that he needed to build the pipeline through, the one controlled by the old Christian man. Eli comes and tells Daniel that he can dig the oil from out of there because Daniel owns the property now, I think, or that the person who owns the property wants to get the oil from under there. And Daniel says yes, he agreed to it. He agrees to it, and this is the first time he agrees to anything Eli does, because this entire movie he really belittles Eli. And that's why when Eli gets the chance to, during the time where Daniel's supposed to be a Christian, Eli belittles him as well.
Daniel, I'm asking if you'd like to have business with the Church of the Third Revelation in developing this lease on young Bandy's 1,000-acre tract. I'm offering you to drill on one of the great undeveloped fields of Little Boston.
I'd be happy to work with you.
Yes.
Daniel explains to Eli, after he agrees to get the oil from Eli, he says that he'll get the oil and he'll pay Eli $100K plus $5K with interest if Eli admits that. I don't want to misquote it, so let me check.
I'm offering you to drill on one of the great undeveloped fields of Little Boston.
I'd be happy to work with you.
Yes, of course, that's wonderful.
But there is one condition for this work.
All right.
I'd like you to tell me that you're a false prophet. I'd like you to tell me that you are and have been a false prophet, and that God is a superstition.
I'm a false prophet. God is a superstition. If he says that, then Daniel agrees to work with him. And Eli eventually says it. it says it a lot, because Daniel makes him say it a lot. Say it like you believe it, and he does. Eli does say it over and over, and it's pretty funny.
I am a false prophet, and God is a superstition. If that's what you believe, then I will say it.
Say it like you mean it, Daniel. Say it like it's your sermon. Don't smile.
I am a false prophet. God is a
Now, stand
superstition.
up. Put your glass down.
I am a false prophet. God is a
Eli,
superstition.
stop. Just imagine this is your church here now. You have a full congregation. So
I am a false prophet. God is a superstition.
say it again.
I am a false prophet. God is a superstition.
Can't hear you at the back.
I am a false prophet. God is a superstition.
Say it again.
I am a false prophet. God is a superstition.
Say it again.
I am a false prophet. God is a superstition.
Those areas have been drilled.
It's actually very funny. And after Eli says it, Daniel tells Eli that it doesn't matter that he said it, because Daniel already got all that oil up. And the way he explains it is, I think he says, say you have 2 cups of, I think he says a milkshake or chocolate milk. I don't know, one of those things, or maybe water, something. I think it was something milk based, or something around milk. And you have a straw, and you come over and you put your straw in.
It's called drainage, Eli. See, I own everything around it, so of course I get what's underneath it.
But there are no derricks there. This is the Bandy tract. Do you understand?
Do you understand, Eli? That's more to the point. Do you understand? I drink your water. I drink it up. Every day, I drink the blood of lamb from Bandy's tract. You can sit down again.
And drink it all up, then you have drainage.
One of Bandy's sounds. That land has been had. Nothing you can do about it. It's gone. Tag.
If you would just take this, please, Daniel.
Drainage! Drainage, Eli, you boy.
What he's saying is that, like, this is where's my other? This is the oil hole things, and he has like a thing to grab the oil from out of one. It'll take out of the other, because there's like oil underneath that runs through, that can run to the other ones if the oil hole is big enough, I think is what he was trying to say.
Drain dry. I'm so sorry. If you have a milkshake, and I have a milkshake, and I have a straw, there it is. That's the straw, you see. Watch it. My straw reaches across the room and starts to drink your milkshake. I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
And after he tells him this, Daniel is still kind of going at him after he tells him to him. He really like freaks out on him. And really just tries really hard to belittle him. And he succeeds. He succeeds at belittling him a lot. Daniel succeeds at belittling Eli. So he makes Eli say that he's a false prophet and God is a superstition. Then Daniel tells Eli that he got up all the oil, and then he just continuously is going at him, just attacking him, verbally attacking him. And Eli starts to have, I don't know if it's a panic attack, but he really starts to freak out at this verbal attacking that he's receiving. He's really freaking out about it. And Daniel is really on him, and he starts to chase him and follow him around. And Eli is so weak that he ends up in a situation where he is in the bowling alley of Daniel's bowling alley at his house, because it's a big house. He's very rich. Daniel throws 2 bowling balls at him. Eli falls over. Daniel still verbally accosting him. He's still going at him. And Daniel ends up grabbing one of those bowling things, one of the white ones. And Daniel comes over one of those bowling things, hits him on the back of the head or his back, causing him to fall to the floor completely. After this, there's like a 30, maybe 15-second pause. And then he hits him over the head again, eventually, beating his brains in. And Daniel's guy comes from upstairs and asks Daniel something. I forgot exactly what he said, but Daniel responds back with, "I'm finished." And the movie ends. I think that was a good summary. It was a quick. You got everything you needed to know. Um, the movie's, I think, around maybe 2 hours. The movie is 2 hours and 38 minutes, but it doesn't really feel like 2 hours and 38 minutes because there's really that not that much that really happens. There's like five major things that happen in the whole scene. Maybe even five different, really, maybe like seven or eight, maybe nine if I'm really stretching it. Nine really different scene locations. You know, you're at the oil place, and then the place right after the oil place, and then you go to this new town, and then we stay there for a while, and then we get to Daniel being famous. Being very rich. Around 2 hours into the movie, the movie is focused mostly around Daniel Plainview, the main character, and Daniel's rise and drive to power and success that is rooted in his, I don't even know if it's ego for himself, maybe just his disdain. Well, I guess it would have to be ego, for which is driven by ego for himself and his dislike for humanity. Drives him to want to be rich, want to be powerful, so he could, in his words, get away from people. This is something that he tells his brother, who is a guy who knew Daniel's real brother and took on his identity to try to gain, I don't know if it's money because he never states that, but to try to pretend to be Daniel's brother, possibly basically because Daniel was rich, essentially. And Daniel really believes in his brother, and he really likes his brother, and he tells this to his brother later on in the movie. In the movie, I really like the drive for the power that he wants to get. It kind of reminds me of Scarface, or Paid in Full, how you see someone rise to success and the fall from success. Like Scarface, like Citizen Kane, like Paid in Full. It's it's a lower to higher movie. It's a movie where the main character starts off, down bad, but he, raises to the levels that, we want him to. But this one seems like extremely personal to Daniel, more so than like the movie Scarface or even Kane, because Kane wasn't really. It was, the whole movie was about Kane, but you never really know what Kane was really thinking or feeling. You just know the life around him. You kind of know, but it's not as, I feel like, personal as this movie is. So there's a lot of times during this movie where or for the first like 15-20 minutes, not that much words are even said. So you really just have to go into the mind space, or just use your own mind to try to assume what the main character Daniel is really thinking about, because he's not really saying anything. And you can just see, or you can just feel his drive that he's has with him during the whole movie. And it's nice to see the ending, to see him actually make it. And to the purpose of the movie, I feel like, was to show the sacrifices of this mentality that Daniel has, I guess. There Will Be Blood, when I look at the title of that, or the title of this movie, I feel like that's the creators saying that when it comes to having the mentality that Daniel has, there will be blood. The mentality like that Scarface has, that Kane has. I really need to think of someone else. Snowfall, remember that show, or Breaking Bad. Just the hard work grind mentality, the Faust mentality, the want to be the biggest, want to be the best, want to be ahead of everyone. That envy that comes with when you want to be better, when you want to be the center of attention. That envy that drives you. The things that can the drive to get to certain heights in the world that we exist in. once you have to develop a certain mentality to get to there, or even want to be in certain heights in the first place to begin with. Like how he didn't want to sell the oil to the two guys, not because he didn't want the money, because he wanted more than the money. He wanted the money and he wanted the power, you know. And in that mentality, when you have that mentality, there will be blood that comes along with that, and there will be sacrifice. There will be people will die. You know what I'm saying? His son, he lost his son. Hearing just on this drive that he on this road that he walks, there will be blood and there will be sacrifice. And in this movie, you see the sacrifice of his will, of Daniel's will. You see him not having really any friends, him not really having a wife, him not really having a life. His whole life is devoted to the oil, you know. And he is rich. He is very successful by the end of the movie, but you can see that all that means really nothing, because well, it does mean something. I'm not gonna say it means nothing, but him being as rich as he is cost him relationships with other people, which doesn't really matter to him because I don't think he values other people to begin with, which is nothing really wrong with that either. So I think the movie does a nice job in showing the sacrifice of those around you for the power, money that you want, that comes with the mentality that Daniel has. And there's another aspect of this movie besides the mentality that Daniel has to drive. The source of the mentality, the dislike for humans or humanity, or just the dislike for other people, maybe because he thinks himself so good, so great, maybe because he's just so egotistical that he just thinks everyone else is beneath him. That feeling is what drives him to the murder, I guess 2 murders that he committed, but really the ultimate murder, the Eli's death. When I look at Eli's death in this movie, I was really, because what I thought was going to happen was that Eli would become very successful. I thought that Daniel would actually fall in this movie. I thought that he would become extremely unsuccessful, like Cain, where he just loses everything and his business isn't as popping or as profitable as it was. And I thought that was going to be like how the author would show that when it comes with this mentality, you can want so much and you can just have greed, and the greed can consume you so much that you have nothing, or that you can sacrifice your integrity like Cain did, how he had that code that he would up, those 12 rules that he had wrote up, and he said, I'm not going to cross this, and he did, and you know, his business failed, his newspaper thing. I thought that would happen with Daniel and that Eli would become super successful, but I was actually wrong. His greed, his drive, his everything got him exactly where he needed to go. And his obsession with this oil, he didn't lose anything from his greed. He just gained a lot more than his greed, but he did lose something, not because of his greed, but for his disdain for humanity, which is something that Cain and like Scarface didn't really have. They weren't driven by hatred or not liking other people like Daniel was. They were driven by money or even power, which Daniel isn't driven by money and power for power's sake. He's driven by money and power so he can be away from people, so he can shape the reality around him, so he can, like I said, be away from people or just have control over, you know, what exists with him. Because you have money. When you have money, you can control who's around you more so than you can when you're poor, or when you're not rich, I should say. And I think what this movie shows is not how greed corrupts as far as a greed for money and power, but how greed or the need to exert power over other human beings corrupts, because that is what ultimately gets Daniel. The thing that Daniel loses control over and is the cause of his downfall, or not even necessarily his downfall, because I don't even know if he really has a downfall in this movie technically, because the last scene is him saying, I am finished. So, in which he says, but it's not necessarily true, because he's not finished, because, well, I don't know if he could get away, but he does live in the early of 19th century, and he is very rich. He is an oil man. I mean, he literally could get away with that body if he really wanted to. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, I think the thing that leads him to, I just say, the ending of this movie is his greed and his need and his want to exert power over other people, to show other people that he is powerful, or just to put others beneath him. If you watch the ending of the scene, you know how I said I thought that they were gonna have it show that, I thought they were gonna have Daniel lose everything and Eli gain everything. What they showed was Eli losing everything and Daniel gaining more. Eli being the Christian, being the, I guess, the good-hearted, not really the good-hearted, but the empathetic, compassionate human being in this instance, who has very little power in his actual life, and he exerts his power over his congregation by putting on a show for them, basically, which is what he is doing. I'm not saying all pastors are doing that, but that's what he's doing. And he loses a lot. He doesn't have the money. He doesn't have the wealth. He's coming to another man, a greediest man, a man who beat him down, a man who is very, almost the opposite of everything that he represents. He's going to that man in need of his help. So when I was watching it, I'm like, that's a very interesting choice for the, creators of this movie to do this. And I didn't really understand what they were trying to mean. But when Daniel beats Eli to death, it shows, in my mind, the ultimate show of his power, or his need to enforce his power over others, going so far to the point of no return. In this whole movie, he does put power over other people by being the boss of them. In that scene where he says something about oil and how everyone freaks out and doesn't believe in him, by him being drunk. I forgot about that scene where he's drunk with his son, and he goes to those two guys who didn't get the oil, and he told them, like, yo, I bet you look like a fool right now. Even though he maybe looks like more of a fool than them, but to him, they look like the fool because he has more power than them. I don't even know if he surpasses them in wealth in that moment. I'm assuming he surpasses them in wealth, but him making that pipeline was him showing power over other people. Him buying up all that land was him showing power. Him being an oil man, or him being rich in all that, in my eyes, isn't even him doing that because he wants to be rich, but him doing that because he wants to show power over other people. And by the end of the movie, he has all the power. He has all the money. He has all the access, the control. He has everything he wants power-wise over other people. But he just needed, or not that he needed, but the opportunity presented itself for him to show a new level of power over someone who is extremely emotionally powerless, just extremely powerless person in every way, almost like the exact opposite of him. What he did to Eli was 100% unnecessary in every way, but it was the final step in his journey to power, which is the journey of the entire movie, the journey to the top. Him doing what he did to Eli was him, in my eyes, him exerting his power for the one last time. And I find it really, 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 really beautiful, the ending, more so than I did when I first watched it, because I really didn't understand it. Like, the day I seen it, I didn't understand why he killed him. It seemed unnecessary. I'm like, why would he do that? Like, what did he gain? But then I had to think about the whole movie and just think about the intention behind the movie and what the creators was doing when they were trying to show me this movie. And I really like the ending now. I really like that he murdered him. It makes me look at the whole movie differently after giving it days of processing. And in the 2 weeks that I've seen this movie, I really like it a lot more now than I did at first, or than I would have thought I would have had my opinion on it. And honestly, I think that the movie is really great. It's probably as great as what people were hyping it up to be. It was really, really, really great. It was one of those like I wish I seen this earlier type movies, because it's just so good, like a Heat or something like that. It's like one of those upper echelons, type movies. Like Kane. What did I give Kane? I've been thinking about Kane recently in this movie, and Kane and the ties to him. Just the the journey of starting from something low and going up to the top. I really like how that movie does it, and I really like how Kane does it as well. And I really like how this movie shows the sacrifice of the mentality that comes with wanting to gain power and money, in the same way that Scarface does, or just power-driven movies do. If I had to rate this movie out of 10, I would give it a 10 out of 10, obviously, because it's really, really good. Yeah, deuces.